It's difficult to admit, but the entire reason I got into meditation was because I had this unquenchable rage. I was angry at the world for being what I perceived to be a fucked up place. I was angry at myself for perceiving to be what I believed wasn't good enough. And just in general, I walked around with this energy of anger that I projected onto myself and others as judgment and criticism. Yet even after beginning meditation, I often found myself slipping into bouts of anger despite the fact that the practice was supposed to be improving the situation. I would get done with sits feeling worse than when I began. However, let me be clear, in the big picture, it was definitely helping. I saw improvements to my overall emotional well-being nearly instantaneously after starting the practice. But a very interesting phenomena also started taking place, which I didn't fully understand the ramifications of until much later on in my practice. This phenomena is what I am calling emotional purification. See, despite the fact that meditation was helping my overall emotional health, this healing process seemed to be occurring in cycles with many ebbs and flows rather than unfolding in a linear, predictable path. I would go days, weeks even, of feeling happier, more at peace and ease, and then suddenly be hit with not only waves of anger, but depression, anxiety, and fear. It's almost like all the work I'd done in meditation would just disappear, only to spontaneously reappear as I continued practicing. And what's crazy is that this emotional purification has not stopped. Even 3 years into serious practice, and I still experience these ebbs and flows. Unfortunately, I don't see many mainstream meditation teachers explaining this topic in depth. This video is an attempt to address this issue. Specifically, I'd like to address what emotional purification is from a big picture perspective, give practical examples of how it manifests, why it occurs, and then finally, what we can do about it. However, please understand, I am not a psychologist or a scientist. I am just someone who has spent hundreds of hours meditating and deeply reflecting on my direct experience. Sometimes professional help is needed to work through what comes up during practice, and practicing meditation should not be used as a substitute for professional mental health intervention. That all being said, I hope you find this video useful for your own journey. This concept of emotional purification is one of the most important concepts you'll learn as a meditator. I can guarantee that if you are serious about your meditation practice, at some point throughout your meditative career, you're going to encounter what I'm defining as emotional purification. And unfortunately, I just don't see or hear many meditation teachers discussing this phenomena in depth. So this video is really an attempt to address this gap in knowledge in the meditation community, at least as far as I'm concerned. So first, let's actually define what emotional purification is. Essentially, emotional purification is a very deep-rooted psychological process that is taking place as we spend hours and hours and hours on the mat meditating. You know, with meditation, your mind is literally transforming. And as you are transforming the way that you're perceiving the world, you're going to gain insight into the nature of reality, into the nature of experience, and the nature of yourself. And with these insights come sometimes quite radical implications. So emotional purification, in a sense, is our mind, our self, coming to terms with what we're realizing on this spiritual path and through our practice of meditation. So it's this rewiring and this reprogramming that occurs, which can sometimes elicit very powerful negative emotions such as anger, which is the primary one that I dealt with when I was beginning my journey. So really, you can think of emotional purification as this like purifying type of event where we're purifying our psyches of negative emotions, limiting beliefs, and all these kinds of things. And so that is what I'm defining as emotional purification. And so to just cut straight to the point, what are practical examples of emotional purification? And I made a list, so let's actually get into the list. Emotional purification can occur as anger, depression, anxiety, fear, traumatic memories resurging. So sometimes as we're working through our practice, we will be hit randomly with very powerful memories that sometimes we forgot even existed, or memories that we thought we were done processing that we actually weren't. So we're hit with very powerful traumatic memories and then feel a lot of emotions as a result. Emotional purification can also manifest as boredom, deep sadness, negative self-talk, sometimes even a regression of practice. So you will go through these phases where like your meditation practice is going really well, you're hitting your stride, you're building a lot of momentum, and then just boom, out of nowhere, suddenly you regress back to a stage of meditation that feels like you're a beginner again, sometimes even worse than a beginner. That is oftentimes actually what happens during this emotional purification process. A literal regression of our mindfulness and of our concentration, of our awareness. Emotional purification can also look like old bad habits resurging and also self-sabotage. So one of the interesting points about emotional purification is that sometimes the purification process looks very different on the surface. So for example, let's say that you are feeling very lethargic and bored during your meditation practice. This can sometimes be a conscious representation of an unconscious emotion, and the unconscious emotion is that you are actually terrified of going deeply within your practice. So your mind, rather than experiencing the fear firsthand, it's throwing up this emotion of boredom almost as an attempt to numb you to the truth of the matter, which is that you're terrified. And I know this might seem kind of strange, but as you continue to work through these purification events, you'll start to gain insight into the origins of them. Another example could be self-sabotage. Let's say that you're constantly starting and stopping projects, or you feel like you can never actually succeed at a project you start at. That actually might be covering up a limiting belief that you are not good enough. And rather than you actually having insight into the fact that you have a limiting belief, instead the limiting belief is manifesting as you self-sabotaging yourself. It's not like your mind is just gonna tell you like, hey, I don't believe I'm good enough to actually accomplish my goals. Instead, you will subconsciously start to self-sabotage and screw yourself over, basically. And it's very tricky, man. Like these events, these purifications are not intuitive at all. A lot of times, you know, fear doesn't just manifest as fear. Fear can manifest as lethargy, or self-doubt isn't going to manifest as self-doubt necessarily. It's going to manifest as you going off and distracting yourself. You know, a lack of concentration isn't actually indicative of what your attention span is capable of doing. A lack of concentration might mean that you are just feeling extremely overwhelmed by the reality of your situation in some way, shape, or form, and you don't actually want to concentrate and dig deeper into the matter. These types of purifications, you have to look at them holistically. You can't look at sadness or depression at face value. You have to like dig deeper. So if you are confronted with these emotional purifications, just keep in mind that it's not always going to be what the surface level manifestation is, if that makes sense. The other point that I would like to address is, why does emotional purification happen at all? And I think this is really interesting. This is a really interesting point. Well, as we are meditating, as we're spending hundreds of hours over the course of our lifetime putting in work, one of the byproducts of our practice is that your awareness starts to increase. Now, awareness is a really interesting phenomena, kind of deserves its own video, but oftentimes we think of our sensory experience as being comprised of sight, taste, touch, sound, smell, the 5 primary bodily perceptions, and then also mind. So we might consider the mind as its own sense, and these 6 senses, so to speak, these 6 manifestations of experience are occurring. But awareness, on the other hand, awareness is kind of strange, it's a bit etheric, and we don't typically think of being able to perceive awareness itself. And again, this is a whole rabbit hole that I don't have time to go into, but essentially, on your meditation journey, not only are you becoming more attuned to your sensory experience, but you're also actually gaining awareness. Your ability to be aware of your reality in a more holistic way is literally increasing. And so what is an example of awareness? I would say a good example of thinking about awareness is that, let's say you're looking out into a meadow, into this like grassy field, and then suddenly you see a snake in the grass. And at first you're thinking like, holy shit, there's a snake. But you notice that the snake is blending in quite well with its surroundings. The interesting thing about this snake though is that it was always there. It wasn't a matter of whether the snake was there or not, it's just that your awareness finally saw it. You finally just were like, holy shit, there's a snake. In a very similar way, this is what is happening as we are meditating. We start to grow in our awareness, and the awareness of these unconscious emotional purification type of experiences starts to unfold. A lot of times, we're not even aware of the ways in which our minds are projecting bullshit into our experience. Our limiting beliefs, again, they don't manifest as just direct self-talk limiting beliefs. They manifest in the way that we behave, or the way that we feel, or the way that we are observing and thinking about the world. But as your awareness gains, you're starting to see the snakes in your own mind. You're starting to actually become aware of these beliefs, mindsets, emotional orientations, contexts in which you're perceiving the world that have always been there, that have always been shaping and manipulating your experience, but that you've just not been aware of. So as we build our awareness through meditation, we start to be able to observe these phenomena much more clearly and see that, in fact, these were here all along. It's just that we didn't have the necessary attentional skills, strong enough mindfulness, so to speak, to actually be able to perceive these things accurately. The other reason, and this is a big one, the other reason that emotional purification is occurring is because as we're meditating, we are transforming our minds. Over time, there is this deep rewiring process. Like I said at the beginning of the video, there is a deep rewiring, a deep reprogramming that is taking place on a very, very, very deep level. As this transformational process is taking place with meditation, you, in a sense, are dying. Your sense of self, your ego as it exists today, is being replaced by how the meditation is reprogramming your mind. And what's so fascinating and also very strange and tricky about the mind is that it doesn't like to change. And so by going on this path of meditation and reprogramming your mind, you are, in a sense, dying to yourself. And just like the body doesn't want to die, it has a very strong survival instinct, so too does our psychological infrastructure, our minds, our sense of self, our ego. Our ego does not want to die. Our ego does not want to change. Our ego wants to remain consistent with its self agenda, with its needs, its wants, its manipulations, its desires. It doesn't want to change any of those things. And so when we're going off and meditating and actually forcing it to change, it's almost like the ego is flailing around like a fish out of water because it realizes, like, holy fucking shit, I'm about to die if I keep going down this road. I don't want to do that. And so you cannot or should not, in my honest opinion, in my humble opinion, you should not underestimate the power of this mechanism, of this very slow, gradual ego death process that takes place as we're transforming and reprogramming our minds across time with meditation. Because the ego will fight back. It will start throwing up old memories, old behavioral patterns, negative emotions, limiting beliefs, in an attempt to thwart our efforts of meditation. So again, you've kind of got this like double-edged sword. On the one hand, when you start becoming aware of the emotional purification at a very deep level, you realize all of the different ways that you've been limiting yourself with these emotional orientations, with these negative beliefs and self-doubts and whatnot that have always been there shaping your experience. But then you've also, on the other hand, got this other side of the equation where your ego is literally fighting back to stop you from succeeding at your meditation. So you've got to be aware of both of these mechanisms and understand that both of these are playing a role as to why emotional purification is happening at all. And the more clear and aware of these mechanisms you can be, the less power that they will have over you. Now this really leads into the final point of this video, which is that now that we have this understanding, this conceptual understanding of what emotional purification is, why it's occurring, the next question is, well, what can we do about it? And this is incredibly important because if you don't know what to do about it, you might end up quitting your meditation habit or practice. you might end up falling off the wagon and just forgetting about your practice altogether. Or you might think, even worse, that meditation is bad for you, and then you give it up on the basis that it's actually making you feel worse, in which none of those things are true. So what can we do in the event that we are facing these emotional purifications? Well, step one is actually reframing this as a positive. If you start going through these emotional purifications, this is actually a great thing. Don't think of depression coming up, for example, as something that's a bad thing. This is actually a positive part of the practice. It is an indicator that you are moving in the right direction. Because I guarantee you that the deeper that you go into yourself, the more shadow elements and really kind of messed up, weird, insane things you're gonna have to face. And so when you start having these really strong negative emotions surge during meditation, this is a sign that you are moving in the right direction, that your awareness is becoming more conscious of the shadow elements of your mind and the ways in which your ego is flailing around doing its thing, the ways in which you've been bullshitting yourself across time. So don't view this as a negative thing, view this as a positive. The other point I would like to say is to be open to the possibility of instantaneous transformation. And basically what I mean by that is when you are in these episodes of depression, anxiety, fear, self-doubt, limiting beliefs, be open to the possibility that in an instant, you could just transform, be different. That you could spontaneously raise your vibrational state in such a way that you are feeling love, feeling happy, feeling powerful, feeling present, feeling authentic, feeling genuine, feeling in line with your higher self. You don't have to just endure these events and wait for them to go away. You can actually take charge and transform yourself over time. Now, this topic of instantaneous transformation is a bit complex, but what I can say is if you can really pay attention to the emotional orientation of what is going on during one of these purification events, when you can start to become conscious of the impermanent nature of your experience, when you can start paying attention so clearly, so concentratedly on the moment that you see how the emotion is flowing in your direct experience across time, and each moment it has to transform, dissipate, and then give rise to a new version of itself. If you can be very clear how your experience is popping into and out of existence moment by moment by virtue of the fact that everything is in a constant and permanent flux, you can then penetrate deeply enough and springboard yourself out of that feeling of depression and into one of positivity, happiness, gratitude, love. So be willing, in my opinion, to be open to the possibility that you can instantaneously transform your experience even when you are feeling overwhelmed by these experiences. And the more that you're able to springboard yourself out of these emotional orientations, the better you'll actually get at it and the more powerful you'll be at doing it in the future. Now, the next point is similar to the second point, except it's kind of the inverse. And that is just be okay with the negativity. Just surrender to it. Just be equanimous with it. Just accept it and send it love. In a sense, send yourself love, because even when you are feeling these strong negative emotions, that's okay. That's still a part of you. That's still a part of what it means to exist as a human. That's part of the actuality of the universe. And we have to remember that one of the core tenets of spirituality is just understanding the way things really are. I think that's a really good definition for spirituality. Is it's a journey of more deeply understanding the way things really are. And part of understanding the way things really are is just accepting fully the fact that negative emotions exist and that they don't have to be fought with or resisted in any way, shape, or form. So if you find yourself unable to instantaneously transform and springboard your way out of these negative emotions, another strategy would be to simply surrender to them and realize that they don't actually have to impact your behavior at all. Just because you're feeling depressed and anxious, that doesn't mean you can't start working towards your goals and, actually making a difference within yourself. So Honestly, just this equanimity itself is a very, very, very powerful force. And in a sense, that's what meditation is all about. It's just about accepting your direct experience without manipulation, judgment. It's just being with what is. So practicing this equanimity, practicing this acceptance, this self-love is a very powerful strategy. And also because of the fact that these things are hard to accept, when they surge, you have a very, very, very ripe opportunity to practice self-love, to practice acceptance, surrender, and equanimity. So again, view these as opportunities rather than struggles or things to fight against. And the last point that I want to make, and perhaps the most important, is keep practicing meditation. Do not let these events stop you. Again, realize that you are moving in the right direction when these things happen, okay? So like, these are not bad situations. These are very powerful signals that your practice is working. Keep practicing no matter what. Keep moving forward. If you stop your meditation practice because of these things, you're gonna end up being in a worse position than if you had just kept practicing. So again, man, like, I mean, there's not really much else to say about this other than you've got to keep going, you've got to keep going, you've got to keep going. There's nothing else to do. You will get through it, you will overcome it, and as you continue to meditate, you are going to be building the skills to more skillfully navigate these events as you move forward into the future. You will continue to experience these things long-term into your meditation career. Meditation is not about just feeling happy and blissed out 24/7. It is about accepting your direct experience for how it actually is. And even though we can instantaneously transform ourselves into a new state or a new vibration, at the end of the day, even when we can't, that's okay too. By continuing your practice, you are exposing yourself to the stimulus you need to be able to accept this reality more fully. So that's pretty much all I had to say. This is a very deep topic. I probably will have to make another video about it, addressing different points more clearly, but this is a really good place to start. Realize, and I just want to end it here, realize that if you are going through this, that it is okay. It is a signal, it is a sign, it is a signpost that you are moving in the right direction. Consider it a meditative milestone if you start to experience strong negative emotions, emotional purification during your meditation practice. If you have any questions on this topic, please leave them in the comment section below. I don't know if you guys have seen on the other videos, but I am very willing to answer very long-winded explanations to questions. I really enjoy being able to help you guys out, help you on your own journey. And as long as my channel is small, man, and I'm not having hundreds of comments, I am like a free agent for answering comments in the comment section below. So please take advantage of that I am here and I'm willing to help you guys. And last thing, if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. It really helps out the channel and helps it grow. And if you are new to the channel and you like the style of content, you like spirituality, you are on a spiritual journey yourself, you have taken the path of meditation, please hit that subscribe button. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. Until next time.